Welcome, everyone, to the Big Ears Review Podcast here at WUTC. We went for the first time to this festival, which is held every year in Knoxville, Tennessee. It is put on by Ashley Capps, formerly of AC Entertainment and Bonnaroo. He also used to have a show on WUOT called Unhinged that even aired in Chattanooga those few years that we were a rebroadcast station for WUOT. So I'm here with a couple of individuals from the WUTC staff who went with me to the Big Ears Festival. And if you don't know, my name is Haley Solomon, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hey everybody, my name is Rob Beckett, and I'm the Assistant Station Manager here at WUTC, and I'm glad to have been able to catch a ride with y'all to Big Ears.
I'm Nessa Parrish, and I am the Digital Content Coordinator, social media person, and photographer for WUTC during Big Ears, as well as host of The Rock Show.
Yes, so you might have heard her on late nights.
It rocks.
So this was the first year that WUTC went to Big Ears and did an official full coverage of the festival. We've sent individuals to the festival in the past. Richard's had a relationship with Ashley Capps and Big Ears for many, many years, but this was the first time we sent the whole coverage team to the festival. So going into it, we definitely all had expectations, concerns, apprehensions, if you will, about ways that this festival might play out, especially because Big Ears, from a logistics standpoint, is very, very different from most music festivals in our region. Most music festivals are held at large plots of land, either like a park or a farm, and everyone is kind of contained on that one plot of land, and the various stages are set up throughout, and you kind of move around from stage to stage within this one sphere of space. Big Ears is not like that. Big Ears is hosted at a variety of music venues spread throughout Knoxville. So you've got some that are kind of in a collection in different areas of town. So you've got, like the Tennessee Theater and the Bijou. They're very close to each other, as well as St. John's Cathedral. Then others like the Mill and Mine, the Jig and Reel. There were a few others over in Old Town that are very close to each other. But ultimately, they are separate individual spaces spread out over the entire city. So I know I personally was worried about that element and how it would play into the festival, thinking that maybe it wouldn't have a culture, that you would feel isolated, that you would lose too much time when moving from one venue to another, that you end up basically seeing nothing. I could not have been more wrong. I actually loved this format more than any festival I've ever been to. There was plenty of time to move around, especially because the sets themselves, each show, was really long. 70 minutes, 75 minutes is what each artist was given. They could play up to that. And so you had plenty of time to sit in for 30 minutes, get up, walk to the next venue, sit in for the last 30 minutes of that show. And that was spectacular. But there were a lot of other things I think that we all were worried about or that we all had expectations for. So I want to kick it to you guys. Nessa, how did you feel going into the festival?
I was definitely a bit nervous because this festival is set up in a way that no other festival we've been to has been, orchestrated at various different venues across the city. I had no idea what to expect. Being one, not from Knoxville, I had never been to any of these venues, and that means as a photographer, I don't know what lighting to expect. I don't know whether or not there's a photo pit, which beforehand they did tell us, I think only one venue had a photo pit, and that as a photographer can mean things get a bit hairy when you need to be up front. You have to essentially run and beat everyone else to the front to make sure that you can get your shot. And that was my main concern, and I also could not have been more wrong. For the most part, I had clear space to, take my photos, move around the venues relatively easily, not being bothered or blocked by giant crowds that won't let me wiggle through. Usually people saw a camera and they were kind enough to scoot out of the way and be accommodating for somebody trying to do their job.
Yeah, I think My really only concern was I thought the different venues were a really unique idea, but transportation around those different venues, because having gone to college in Knoxville, I saw a list of the venues and thought, I don't think that this is going to be an easy travel. But the one thing that Big Ears knocked out of the park with is their trolley system. Like, they had different stops throughout the city of Knoxville. And so if you needed to make it from like the Point to the Tennessee Theater or to the convention center or to just anywhere around Big Ears, you could do that in about 10, 15 minutes, because how the bands were set up, you maybe wanted to only catch half of a show, or say, oh, I'm going to just catch the first 10 minutes of this, then I need to go across town to this venue and listen there. So they did a really, really good job, and you can really move throughout the festival with relative ease.
Yeah, and those trolleys always had some really nice, kind attendants working them that would ask everybody who got on the trolley what stop they were trying to get off, and then they would tell them, oh, this is your stop. You're here for so-and-so.
Yeah, no question.
So nice.
Yeah, it's such a nice touch. Like, good job, Big Ears, for sure.
Yeah, right? And you never had to wait that long for the trolley. We did kind of test it one of the days to see if the trolley system was reliable, because we've experienced festival-provided trolley systems in the past, and you could be waiting 45 minutes for one, so you can't count on it if you're trying to be somewhere quickly. It's not a reliable source of transportation, but at Big Ears, their free shuttle system was absolutely a reliable source of transportation, and it took 20-minute walks and made them 2-minute trips.
Yeah.
So I really appreciated that as well.
No question.
Also, the app.
Yeah, the app was big, for sure.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the Big Ears app.
So my favorite thing about the Big Ears app was, the updates, the alerts for venue capacity. While we never personally encountered the, oh no, it's full moment, we did get those alerts for some shows that we may have been interested in. And with those alerts, you're able to plan accordingly. Maybe you were already on the way to this one venue and now they're full, but you could just go to the one right next door, or, a block down the road, and find another show. And then when people do the changeover from the one show they're at to go catch the next, you can slide right in and there you go. You're in the show.
Yeah, and what Nessa's talking about with the changeover, there was absolutely a noticeable, what should we call it, like a changing of the guard, a mass exodus. People were totally spending dedicated 30 minutes, getting up, going to the next 30 minutes of another show. And so at a 30-minute mark, you would feel a significant portion of the crowd get up and walk away. But no worries, because there were people who wanted to enter this show. They had come for the last 30 minutes, and so then they come and file in and fill up the venue. So whenever you got a capacity alert, you really could just say, all right, well, I'll spend the next 15, 20 minutes waiting at the closest venue, because so many of them were clustered, so it's like 3 or 4 venues within a 7-8 minute diameter walk. You could just wait there for 15 or 20 minutes and then go back to the original venue that had a capacity alert, and odds are you can get in now. So the app really made it as easy as possible to move around in the festival and see as much of the festival as you could. It even had maps. And
I'm going to say, like, just the constant communication you got from the app was really, really helpful, because there's a lot of different factors, like you said, capacity alerts that you don't get with like Bonnaroo or Big Ears. I mean, they're going to fit as many people as they can as close to the stage as possible, and that may be a really, really long way away, but like they did a really good job of saying like, hey, this is at capacity, so there's a wait, but you could go see this other artist at this other venue. We have this other artist playing right here, or this other artist playing right here. Here's some alternatives for you if you don't want to wait. But if you do want to wait, you're really not going to wait that long. Honestly. I mean, it was such a unique way that they kind of did the crowds, and I guess it may have been more of the type of crowd. It was like, hey, we got our fill, we're not going to just sit and stay the whole time unless you really wanted to. A lot of people did get up and move to like different parts of the festival, so that was the one thing. Like, if you're waiting in line, you're probably not going to wait too long. Right.
And really only the smaller venues ended up with frequent capacity alerts. Some of those venues are huge. I mean, the Tennessee Theater is massive, and so you'd be hard pressed to hit capacity at the Tennessee Theater, though it did happen.
Yeah.
So there were venues you could pretty much count on were going to have capacity issues, and then you get there sooner, or venues that you know probably aren't, and you can be planning to show up in the last 30 minutes. Yeah.
And that's one of the things when I did research for past big ears that people had a lot of complaints about, like you're waiting in lines a lot. But honestly, like I didn't feel that at all. It might have been an issue in the past, but they definitely fixed it this year, and they did, and they've done a really good job. And I can't say enough good things about this festival.
Yeah, and I wonder too, because the map is so spread out and there's so many venues, that it makes it to where each individual venue doesn't have that many people in it.
Yeah, I felt very free from like the thought of a crowd crush, or, the overall feeling like a sardine in a can feeling that you can get in a festival that is in a big field or in a giant park. Sometimes when you have 40,000 people facing the same stage, you can't really go in and focus on the music because you're shoulder to shoulder with everybody else. And this festival was a delight in the way that was not the case. Everyone, for the most part, was kind and chill and there for the music.
Mm-hmm.
That is so true. I think like the average age at Big Ears is definitely 40s or 50s. This is a stark difference from a lot of the other festivals we go to where the average age is going to be in their 20s. But what I think that gave us was a crowd full of people dedicated to the music, dedicated to listening, versus a crowd of people dedicated to the party, with the music being kind of like a fun bonus.
Don't get me wrong, we do love Bonnaroo and Shaky Knees, but it was a nice and refreshing change of pace.
Absolutely. Hey, and on the venues, not to mention the sound quality of individual venues, so much better, so much more reliable than a stage that was built for a festival in a park that then needs to blast sound like 2,000 feet backwards.
Yeah.
And so they have turned all of the speakers up to the max, and you end up just getting this kind of blare of noise. Vocals are always lost. Bass is always too high. Big Ears didn't have a single audio problem. Every single venue I went to, the sound was excellent.
It was like the fact that they have so many unique venues, and I guess that is a plus of like having music played at each of these venues pretty regularly. They're not going to have a lot of audio miscues or mishaps or like crackled speakers or like a feedback of a mic unless that's, intended. But just a breath of fresh air to like actually go and see like, oh, there's not going to be a performance that's going to be stopped for a multitude of reasons. This whole festival just, I felt like went off without a hitch.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. If you can't tell, you out there listening, we all loved Big Ears. We would go back any year and would all recommend this festival as one to put on your rotation. Or if you are not typically a festival goer, give this festival a chance.
Yeah.
Because it might have the kind of vibe that you are looking for. It really does feel like a series of small, intimate shows rather than a giant park where you absolutely feel the entire time that you're one of 40,000. That wasn't the case at Big Ears. Big Ears felt very intimate, very comfortable. Did we have any complaints?
Yeah, my complaint is the food. So that was something that in other festivals where you are in this big encompassing space, you don't really have to think about planning out your food because it's just a quick trip over there to the corner and you grab whatever it is that you're looking for and you go back right into the music. With Big Ears, because it's spaced at various venues across the city, places had snacks. But if you're looking to do a little bit more than have a little snack, such as eat a meal, you have to seek and plan that out. I will say day one was when we discovered we need to be a little more strategized with how we are going to eat. That moment came to us when we were all, I was hangry, personally. I don't know about anyone else, but everything was an annoyance because I was hungry. And when you're focusing on that, you're not really getting to dig in and enjoy the entire experience.
That's so true. I definitely agree with that. It was food and water. At most outdoor festivals, they've got water stations in addition to that kind of like food court you were mentioning. And so it's really easy to just take your bottle to a water station, fill it up, and keep going. In big years, you've got essentially the concession stand at every individual venue. So like water is available, but it's available to purchase. And then some venues didn't want you to come in with liquid in a bottle. So you needed to finish that water before you entered another venue. And when you're moving from venue to venue pretty quickly and regularly, it's not really convenient to buy a water bottle, down it in a 5-minute walk, and then have to buy another water bottle. And we absolutely suffered from the kind of lack of readily available free water and the time and space to go to a restaurant. Because even when you have the time, you're likely not alone. Knoxville's also a big city. There are other people who have to go to dinner. And so you're then competing for space to sit down and have a meal, in addition to time. So that is absolutely something I would, if you're going to big years, think about meals, plan them out, make reservations, get to your meal place as quickly as possible so that you have the time to really sit down and eat, or bring heavy snacks, because it's not going to be freely available and super convenient to acquire just in the moment.
Yeah, there are limited eating options around the festival. So if you're constrained on time, there's not a lot of options. So I definitely making the reservations would be definitely ideal.
I mean,
sure.
It almost felt like there's food everywhere, but I don't have the time, and most of them are crowded. Like there was just no convenient, like grab the food, keep walking, go into the next venue. Like Nessa was saying at a music festival outdoors, like you grab the food and you head back into the crowd.
Right.
That's super convenient, but it's not that way at big years. But I really feel like that's my only complaint.
Overall, like they did a great job at everything. There was no sound issue where, we were paused for X amount of time because things were paused due to an interruption. It was an elevated experience. Like it felt like we were getting a VIP without being a VIP.
And honestly, like for a 4-day festival, this is probably one of the most affordable festivals you could like buy a ticket to, or like a pass. And they had like a lot of different options. Like they had like a general admission plus, and then I think they had like the VIPs that are probably going to be a little bit more pricey, but for typical festival VIPs, it's probably not to the level of like a Bonnaroo VIP or, again, different crowds. But it is definitely like, if that's something that seems like it's really interesting to you and you see somebody on their next year's lineup or this past year's lineup, it's like, dang, I wish I had seen them, or like, oh, I really want to go see them. You could probably get a ticket for a fairly cheap price.
Yeah. And sometimes they bring artists back too. So it's worth going for sure. We would all give it 5 stars. Highly recommend. Let's talk about the music a little bit though. We've talked about a lot of the format of the festival, but the music was spectacular. I know we all had standouts. Nessa, you want to go first?
Yeah. So my number one, still in awe, John Paul Jones arising from the ground, playing the organ. It was pitch dark in the Tennessee Theater, and all you hear is ooh, that organ just filling the air. We don't see anyone playing an organ. Where is he? Next thing we know, the ground opens up, and there he arises.
That's cool.
Ascending from nowhere, slaying on the organ. John Paul Jones. He was a solo individual on this stage for this set, and this was probably the only show I've been to, I would say, in my life where the one individual by themselves filled the stage, like with their presence and their like sheer amount of skill. He was standing on the Tennessee Theater stage, littered with instruments everywhere for him to pick up and play, and he did a fantastic job too. At one point he picked up the bass and made a comment about how someone online asked for isolated bass from him, and he was like, well, here it is, and I hope you like it live. And there we were, blown away by the legend of John Paul Jones playing the bass. It was beautiful.
The amount of instruments that man could play is mind-boggling. I only was able to catch a little bit of that show, but just the amount of instruments that were on that stage, just like the fact that man has so much talent, and he can be able to, like, I'm just going to play the piano, I'm going to play the bass, I'm going to play this random instrument you've never heard of and it sounds amazing, I'm going to go play this now. Like, he's awesome.
Yeah.
Just 100% awesome.
And he was one of the few people to hit a capacity alert at the Tennessee Theater, right?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah. I was very early. Obviously, I knew this dude was going to pull in the crowds. And so I made my way over there. And at one point, I looked around. In the top sections, there were people lining the rounded walls of the Tennessee Theater and clusters at all the doorways. And in the little walkways, there would be little clusters of people. And it was a full house. It was beyond a full house. No seat was available. There was standing room only at that point. And what was left, there wasn't much.
Wow, that's so crazy. One of my standout shows was also at the Tennessee Theater. We saw Hermanos Gutierrez there, the Ecuadorian-born, Swiss-raised brother duo. They just play the guitar. It's essentially just two guitars, but wow, is it a full sound. I mean, they are sonically just, it's like a spiritual journey, and they absolutely take you visually to a place. I see the desert every time, and they talk a lot about how that's their intention, and so they're perfectly executing their intention. We got to be really close for Hermanos Gutierrez, and so got to see their, all the beautiful stone jewelry that they wear, and just felt really intimate since it's just the two brothers sitting in chairs up on the stage. They don't take up a lot of space, so it felt really good to be up close. And then they played a ton of music off of their upcoming album, Sonido Cosmico, which should be out June 14th. One of the tracks that they played is called Until We Meet Again, and it's actually inspired by one of the brothers' favorite movies, Paris, Texas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the song was inspired by the lead character, Travis. So I thought that was really neat. Would not have pegged them for Paris, Texas lovers, but they're always so spectacular to see perform live, and seeing them in such a beautiful theater like the Tennessee Theater was just really breathtaking.
Yeah, the sound that came off, just the limited space that they took up in that stage, but that sound was unbelievable, especially in the Tennessee Theater. We were so close. I know you mentioned the jewelry. We saw that they had a action figure of He-Man on their pedal board stand, which I thought was really funny. So I wonder what the story behind that is. But yeah, they sounded amazing. It's literally like you said, that is the best way to describe them, is they sound like the desert in a really good way. It's just complete vibes music.
Absolutely. I would go watch them play every day for the rest of my life. I will dry up and die decrepit in a chair in front of Hermanos Gutierrez.
And like one of the guitarists, I can't remember which brother it was, he used his thumb as his style is he uses his thumb as like percussion to smack his guitar strings, and it makes that percussion sound.
They both do that because they'll go back and forth.
So cool.
One of them's kind of on an acoustic guitar the entire time, and then the other one will go back and forth between a lap steel and an acoustic guitar. And then they've got like a small little hand drum. Yeah, it's so simple and yet so full. I really can't get over that, just how such a simple amount of instrumentation produces such a full sound.
Yeah, I know there's a story that Dan Auerbach signed them to Easy Eye after hearing them for 10 seconds, and I can absolutely believe it. It's like, this sounds amazing.
Oh, without a doubt. And now he's produced 2 albums, and one of the songs they love to play is called Tres Hermanos, and it was the first song that they ever wrote with anyone else, and they wrote it with Dan Auerbach.
There you go.
So cool.
That's awesome.
And if you want to see photos from these performances, head over to WUTC.org and you can look at them, because I took them and they're there for you to enjoy.
So true. I know you've got some really great pictures of the artists that we've mentioned and more. Another one of my highlights that Nessa took some really cool photos for was Hooray for the Riff Raff. Never seen Hooray for the Riff Raff live. Took me a while to really get into the band in general, but I've really been digging the most recent album, The Past Is Still Alive, which the frontwoman Alinda Segarra wrote kind of at a period of grief after the death of her father. So a lot of the songs are pretty heavy. And the set they performed at the Mill and Mine during Big Ears was almost entirely music from this new album, and I was loving it. I mean, her voice was excellent, and she was so like unassuming up on the stage. She didn't talk a lot, but she didn't really need to. And then a lot of the other musicians with her, like her guitarist, clearly an excellent, very talented musician. I mean, he had some really, really cool solos where he was playing the guitar in a really weird way. And I was just totally surprised by that. Did not expect it, like for the full band to all be very talented instrumentalists. But then just in general, I mean, her voice was so beautiful. Can't say that enough. And I really enjoyed that show at the Mill and Mine. That was a great venue location for Hooray for the Riff Raff, which is definitely another bonus of Big Ears, is that they do a good job pairing the artist with the venue, because all of the venues are so different.
Right.
And they each provide their own character that can mesh really well with the artist if it's chosen correctly. And to me, it seems like they're choosing correctly every time.
Again, that combination of her and Hooray for the Riff Raff at the Mill and Mine was perfect. It was like a perfect, like that was my first show, so it was a perfect ease into the festival vibe. So it was such a good show. I've got two standouts. My first standout from Saturday night, it was Herbie Hancock that performed at the Civic Auditorium, which is, again, another perfect combination for his whole jazz ensemble. I had heard of Herbie Hancock just from a couple of albums that he did in the 70s that are more like jazz kind of jam, like work that he did with the Headhunters. And this was a really, really cool performance because he's like in his 80s and still sounds amazing. He's mostly behind the piano, but the band that he had was absolutely unbelievable. Shout outs for their horn player, their trumpet player, I should say. Terrence Blanchard has actually helped compose a lot of the music for Spike Lee directed movies. I know he had done like Black Klansman when it came out, and then he did work for The Woman King, which just came out recently. And then his saxophone player was a lot younger than a lot of the bands, and he had told a story that he had actually come through his school of jazz and is now touring with him as his saxophone player. So I thought that was really, really cool.
Wait, educated in the Herbie Hancock School of Jazz?
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool.
So cool.
Let me actually find the official name, because I think...
Didn't they call him the kid?
Yeah, essentially, like he was like the kid. They all made jokes like he's a lot younger than me. He sounded amazing. And one of the things that Herbie did that before I get to the music was that when he introduced his bands, like it's not just like, you know, how normally bands will do the like from Chattanooga, Tennessee, it's Haley Solomon, or from Mount Juliet, Tennessee, it's Nessa Parrish. He literally took 3 to 5 minutes introducing and telling stories about how they started playing together and how special that each member of this band is. And it was really endearing and awesome. Like it was really sweet, especially for like, you know, people that they have been playing to, like, I know his guitar player, I can't remember his name, that they had been playing for about 20 years together. Wow. And one of the solos that he did, I have a video of it, but he like took and smacked, he like made sounds with his guitar, like smacking it, just like not playing, but just smacking his guitar. It was really cool, and it made like a little, just the cool sounds that they were able to play. Their horn sections were awesome. Like they took, each instrument would go off and play like I'd probably say like a 2 to 3 minute solo, and then to come back and they play, and then it would just circle around the whole band, and then it would end. It was so cool. Like it was definitely not something that I normally listen to, but it was an amazing performance, especially from a master like Herbie Hancock.
Yeah.
And I would definitely recommend seeing him while you still have the chance, while he still is touring, because you never know when he could hang it up, but he seemed like he was having the time of his life. He also brought out like a little talk box and started playing with that, so that's always fun.
How cool.
Yeah.
That personally changed my life. I have, since Peter Frampton, always wanted to see a talk box used in person, and surprise, Herbie Hancock.
He did it towards the end. It was awesome. Then the second of my highlights from Big Ears is on the last day, I was able to go see Andre 3000 at the Point on Sunday afternoon. And the Point, if you're not familiar, is a church. So it was a very small venue, while the Civic Auditorium and the Tennessee Theaters are larger venues. This is a very small church. It had 2 stories. When I first walked in, they were doing tickets for this event, so we had to get a ticket. And once I walked in, had like a little stage, and they had instrument setup, which I thought was really cool because a lot of the churches are just like normal churches that are still active, but they were able to redesign them for the festival. And it was and the acoustics in there are so good. It was such a cool idea to do that and partner with these churches, especially for Andre 3000, who when I walked in, he had been like lighting incense. So it smelled really, really nice in there. I was like, okay, this is going to be a really cool experience. And what I thought was he was going to play songs from the new Blue Sun album that he just released. But it turns out he decided to fully compose a different show.
Wait.
Like
the whole show was a jam.
Essentially, yes. I mean, there were music breaks, but essentially it was completely like made up from the spot, and like they were doing IQs for people to like take over. Like he had a drummer, a guitar player, a lot of like ambient music type of sounds that were coming out, but he played so many different flutes that were awesome. He sounds amazing, first of all. Like this guy's he sounds it's so talented. Like eventually he told the story of he just saw this woman playing a flute right after he had been done with like Outkast and like taking a break, and essentially said, I want to do that. Which he told the story of like how he and Big Boy started Outkast. As they were sitting on their couch, they saw somebody rap, and it's like, I want to do that. He did the same thing with the flute. And then I know he had told the story, like he had gone over to Japan, and it was funny. He was practicing over in Japan for several years, but he would go and play in like Central Park and in New York, and people would try to give him money because I guess he looked homeless. He's like, no, I'm good. Like I'm just practicing my flute. But it was completely awesome. And one of the cool things that he did was invited anybody who was at the performance to make noise, and he let the audience know that they were actively sampling from crowd noise, and that like if you felt so inclined, you could shout anything out within reason, of course. But they were saying like we would be able to use it for like this performance and potentially future performances. Like we're having our ears open and we can use that. And then people started shouting out random things or like making weird noises, and it was such a unique performance. The last song that they did a kind of a build-up culmination of like, you know, how it's been a fairly peaceful music show, and then they built up to this cacophony of like flutes and instruments and like different sounds, and it just completely like made my ears ring, and it was awesome. It was interesting to note that was I think either his second to last show or last show at Big Ears, but it was the first one he had done in the afternoon. All the other ones had been done in the evening, so it would have been cool to see him in the evening, but the late afternoon of like 3 to 5 p.m. was perfect.
Especially in the Point, because it has such gorgeous stained glass windows.
Yeah.
That at that time of day, the light is just pouring in, and it makes the whole space so golden. And with all of the incense and these other elements of ambiance that Andre 3000 created, I feel like probably 3 p.m. at the Point was maybe the best.
It was perfect. It really was. And just, I don't think I've ever seen a show like, and I know like Big Ears is so rife with unique artists that you can't see anywhere else. I know like a Whistler, just a cool festival. And I just don't think I would ever see anything like that again. So if you do have the chance, please go see Andre 3000 on his tour and be pleasantly surprised like I was. It was awesome.
I saw a show in the Point in the afternoon, and I really thought that venue was absolutely gorgeous. And just like with Andre 3000, they had taken the time to make the stage area like a whole visual space. It was Claire Rousey, and she had set it up like a bedroom. So there was a fake wall with posters and calendars, and then an actual bed that she sat on to produce. And most of like her genre of music is totally ambient. And there were 2 other people on stage, and they were kind of just sitting on what looked like the floor of her bedroom, as she called it. And it was really neat. I really enjoyed what they did and what they allowed her to do with the space at that church. That one was a surprise for me.
Speaking of the Point, I, and actually both I and Rob, went to see Joe Russo's Selcouth Quartet.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
They killed it. They definitely pulled out some stops and some things that I didn't expect. Like when they were setting up the stage, I saw the drummer pull out a tree branch and set it off to the side, and I thought maybe they were building the ambiance and setting the stage and the scene. I thought that was odd because it was the only decoration on stage. And to my surprise, during the performance, it was used as, I guess, percussion. The tree branch was shaked viciously by by the drummer, and it made that like flowy tree leaf sound. And then at one point, the guitarist.
Wait.
Oh,
The tree branch.
yeah.
Did it have dried leaves still on it?
Yeah.
It was
They were
almost
like-
like a bushel of like leaves that they would shake and it would make It was
Yeah.
Oh, this is so cool.
It was.
awesome.
The scene was set. That's all I needed. All you need is the sound. The additional top-notch experience from Joe Russo and the Silkooth Quartet was Guitar Man pulled out a bow for a violin and started playing his guitar with it. It was beautiful.
Wow.
I know that's done other places and elsewhere and other bands, but to see it in person in the point, this very specifically curated venue with the light as it is at this time of day, with the sound bouncing around in the shape of this venue, it was insane. There's nothing that I've experienced quite like that for someone that doesn't really enjoy jam bands or jam performances as much. That definitely made me change my mind a little. So maybe I'll see more jams because that was pretty rocking.
Well, and you're onto something with the cathedrals and the churches being a space that just have excellent acoustics and allow the sound to bounce around in the room in a really positive way. I mean, one of the shows we saw kind of towards the end of the festival was Trio Medieval or Medieval. I'm not sure which one it is really, but it's three women who are singing all a cappella, Old Norse and Old English folk songs. And they were haunting. They didn't have any microphones at all. And let me tell you, they did not need those microphones.
Nope.
Their voices were always hitting the correct note and were so full and so loud, and they layered with each other in this really beautiful way. And they really didn't use any instruments at all. I mean, they had a couple of instruments that created a tone that would carry, like, you know, the little metal bowls that you, like the little brass bowls you hit and then pull the mallet around the edge, the outside edge of the bowl to create a tone. They also had this weird instrument I'd never seen before, which was kind of like a V-shaped object that they held in their hand. And when they did a sharp motion forward, the two sections of the V hit each other and created a tone, a single tone. And I think they were using that mostly to make sure that they were on the correct pitch. But the whole performance, I would never casually listen to this music ever. Never would I ever find myself in the car like, I'm going to turn on Trio Medieval. But seeing it live was such an incredible experience that it made me love it. Even this genre I don't like.
Oh, yeah.
I was totally captured by live. And really, this was in St. John's Cathedral. So again, another example of gorgeous stained glass. But the cathedral elevated their performance even more. It was a necessary element, actually, of the performance.
We went in the early, mid-morning hours, I guess, and it was a cloudy day, so we had diffused light just shining through the sides of the windows, and it really just made this place like so bright and beautiful and airy, and it contrasted with like their hauntingly, like, I don't know the right word to describe just what this venue sounded like, because the shape of it truly sent, they had like little pipes on the walls and things, like their voices reverberated through every part of this space. It was fully encompassing, like definitely not my jam either for, you know, in the car, but live, that is unlike any performance that you will find at another festival.
Totally agree. They would not put those ladies on the stage at any festival.
Yeah, their voices were angelic. It was just completely, just blew me away. Didn't know what they were saying, but it sounded amazing.
Any other surprises? Maybe things you stumbled upon at this festival? It's pretty easy to stumble upon things. Do love that about Big Ears.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is Son Rompe Para.
Son Rompe Para.
Son Rompe Para, the cumbia punk band.
Yes. Cumbia punk. What the?
Yeah, when I first saw the marimba player take off his shirt and literally Wolverine 3 or 6, I should say, or 3 in each hand.
The mallets, 3 mallets for the xylophone thing.
And just start slamming them, and it sounded good. Like you would think it would be like a toddler doing it, but like it sounded great with the punk music accompanying it. It was crazy. It was like when I was like, what is this? Like what are we watching? And then I was like, this is amazing. This is great.
It was so high energy.
Yeah.
And like they came on with that energy. There wasn't like the slow, I didn't feel like they had a slow build or ease into it. It was boom, like right off the bat, jumping into it. And not once did they really slow it down. They kept it going. Dude at the end who took his shirt off was sweating bullets. Like that man looked like he had taken a shower on that stage.
Absolutely. And he was basically the lead instrument. So a band where the xylophone is a lead instrument, never would have imagined I would enjoy listening to that. But it was so groovy. Everybody in there was dancing with really quick feet, to that cumbia vibe. And as Rob was saying, because of how hard and fast he was playing, it looks like no way he's hitting these notes. Like
right.
he looked crazy, but it sounded perfect.
Yeah.
I don't think he hit a single incorrect note. And there was an entire song that was just him. The rest of the band, one by one, left the stage in very dramatic fashion. So that part was kind of cool. There was clearly some very well curated stage plans. I mean, they had a performance that had moments where everyone left the stage and came back. But that guy, xylophone player guy, he carried like a full 5-minute song by himself. And it was enjoyable. I enjoyed it. I would listen to it again.
And Nessa, you bring up a really good point that it was so high energy, which is like a lot of the shows that we had at Big Ears were a lot of like calm or like more chill, mellow types of shows. And that one was not it at all. And it was a perfect like counterbalance. Cause like, you hear all these shows and then you're like, oh, these are all pretty nice. And then you hear something like that and you're like, dang, I want to like jump through a wall right now. It was awesome.
That was something going into Big Ears that I guess would have been on my list of concerns, is that I have a heavy lean in my music taste towards rock. Things that are faster paced, a little heavier, a little darker, edgier sounding, and I managed to find a few things each day that like were on my list of, I have to see, I have to hear it, and I loved all of them. Like, this band killed it. Like, not once did I think, oh, this one's not that great. Maybe the next one's good. Like, the whole time I was just in it. Like, from the very start where I was, up front having to take pictures of the band, doing my job portion, to, all right, I've taken my pictures. I'm not allowed to stand up here anymore and got to move. Like, I stayed around to see the show. And sometimes I'm not able to do that because I have to go to the next set to get pictures for that. But this one, my day was free at this point. I had a block of time where I could enjoy the show, and I did. And I'm so glad because, one, cumbia in Tennessee isn't something that is around at all. And so to find like a cumbia punk band, I don't know, they popped off. They did great.
Really did.
And they were one of the few artists that played multiple shows. They played, I think, up until the final show, I think, was at the Jig and Reel on Sunday night. That was the closer.
Wow.
I think they played maybe 4 to 5 times at Big Ears.
Yeah, because they even played a last-minute pop-up show on I want to say the Wednesday before the festival started.
That's awesome.
So that was something I noticed, was that Big Ears definitely did a couple of pop-up events the 2 days prior to the festival. So if you have the time and are coming to this festival, if you want to come in on a Tuesday and stay through Monday, you will definitely be able to see some unplanned, spontaneous, free stuff. Son Rompepero played a free show at Barley on, I want to say, the Wednesday before. So Big Ears does put in a little extra effort to make your trip up to Knoxville totally worth it. And the festival itself is just so wonderful. It's full of surprises. It's full of high quality artists, high fidelity spaces. You just need to plan your dinners, okay?
Yeah.
Just plan your dinners. But in general, I think this festival captures the spirit of genre free that this station has more than any festival we've ever been to. Because as Nessa was saying, like, not every artist is for every person, but if you attend enough shows, you're going to find one artist that really is for you.
That's such a perfect sentiment, because you can go into a festival like this and only see a couple things, but you're going to come out saying like, oh, I love this band that I didn't know existed 2 days ago, and I'm going to follow them for, the rest of their career. It's a good way to branch out, because I know a lot of us, when we get older, we kind of tend to like what we like. But it is always cool to give something a chance, because you never know, you might just enjoy it.
Yeah, and with those long sets, you really can go to half of one show and then half of another. You really can sample. Say, I'm going to give it 5 minutes, and then at 5 minutes decide, do you want to stick around or do you want to go to something else? And it won't take you very long to go to that something else. And if you're tired of walking, you can hop on the trolley and go to something else. And it really was so approachable.
Big Ears, big fan.
Big Ears, big fan. Big city, lots of music.
Thanks for tuning in to WUTC's Big Ears podcast. This is part of WUTC's festival coverage. We were talking about Big Ears 2024, but no fear, we will return to Big Ears 2025. We absolutely love this festival. We recommend you go if you can. And we'll see you in a little while for Shaky Knees and Bonnaroo 2024.